Hi, I'm Anne Gaviola. Welcome to the Peak on Global, where we break down what is trending in the business world and what you need to know to stay ahead of the curve. Joining me now is Brett Chang from the Peak podcast. Welcome, Brett.
Hey, Anne, great to be with you.
Let's start things off by talking about GDP. So the latest read of it shows Canada's economy was surprisingly strong in the first quarter of this year. Now you combine that with a resilient labor market and inflation ticking higher again, and suddenly an interest rate hike from the Bank of Canada doesn't seem so unlikely, does it?
Yeah, well, that's what it's looking like. And I think this is possibly one of the better case scenarios that economists were looking ahead to, which is that it looks like the central banks may actually pull off this soft landing where, with inflation high, but also having a strong labor market, that they're more chasing inflation rather than having that economic downturn that some people predicted might happen.
Yeah, I mean, my next question was going to be kind of what does this resilience tell us about the likelihood of a recession? And I just want to compare and contrast because it's June now and we're about, halfway through the year. This is when many economists previously, many moons ago, thought we could see a marked economic dip. But what we're seeing is consumer spending is strong, jobs continue to be created, it keeps chugging along, our employment market, the housing market is showing signs of vigor, and consumers, at least in the first part of the year, they did continue to spend.
Yeah, but there's still troubles on the horizon. When you look at things like interest rates and how that actually impacts households, a lot of Canadians have mortgages that they're going to have to re-up their mortgage rates. They're going to be paying more on those. And I think the tenuous situation is that if there is any type of downturn where you see some type of mass layoff, what that will do is make it really tough for those families and households to actually pay those interest rates on their mortgages, which creates a lot of trouble, as like we talked about a few weeks ago, and creates a lot of trouble in the economy, not just for the families and the households themselves, but the institutions that back that as well.
Yeah, and I think kind of economics 101, we should remind ourselves that it takes anywhere between 18 months to approximately 2 years for the impact of each rate hike to make its way throughout the economy broadly. So in some senses, we are just kind of seeing the tip of the iceberg and TBD what's to come. Our second topic is also a big one. It is about existential threats. Now, we've seen leaders from OpenAI, Google, DeepMind, and other experts in the field of AI warning that what artificial intelligence evolves into could be as deadly to humans as things like pandemics and nuclear weapons. They're really not holding back with that description. And I personally, I try really hard not to be alarmist, but something about listening to the foremost experts in this field being united in their messaging feels intuitively really important, the same way we shouldn't dismiss, scientific warnings about the dangers of global warming. Like I said, this is a big one to unpack, but let's try it. What are your thoughts, Brett?
Well, I personally don't know what to think. I think you're absolutely right that you see people on both sides of the argument, very qualified people who are saying that AI poses an existential threat. Some people say that can be mitigated with regulation. There are other people that say that's overblown. And so it's really tough to come to a conclusion, especially right now when we're in such the early stages of this technology, to know exactly how it's going to evolve. One thing I do think back to is that when we look at nuclear proliferation, for example, many of these same alarm bells are being raised then, and it absolutely does pose an existential threat to humanity, just like AI might as well. And so I think the better question is how we're actually going to move forward to try to find a path in which we can take advantage of the technology and the benefits this technology can provide to humanity while also keeping it safe.
Yeah, what kind of makes it difficult to figure out where you sit for some people is that these warnings come with very little detail as to how exactly AI could upend or just plain kind of end human existence as we know it. And that is the point here. I want to talk strategy. There are lots of approaches to regulation, but the people behind this particular latest warning don't want leaders around the world to get distracted with, the details and the infighting as we tend to do. They simply want to impart a sense of urgency around this as a top priority. In this, it's pretty much an AI arms race. Who could have foreseen that, for example, microblogging site would become what is now known as Twitter, or what it was in its heyday, or that, a platform to rate how hot women at Harvard would turn into the thing that is Meta now. How effective, this is my question to you, is this approach to appealing to leaders and lawmakers and saying, hey, this is really important?
Well, it's on the radar for sure. If you look at the White House, they've hired a few people who were formerly of DeepMind, which is one of the Google AI divisions, to now take a deeper look at AI policies. They're actively working on it. And you saw Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI, testify in front of Congress. And I think that's all good. And these are positive steps to be taken. You now look at places like the EU that are actively coming up with what legislation might look like. And so I think it is the right idea that obviously this is very transformational technology. And I think you can look at it as an existential threat to humanity, which it probably should be considered as and regulated accordingly. On the other hand, though, that this technology will also have a number of other second and third level consequences that we haven't even conceived of yet. And so continuing to have that discourse, to better understand it, to stay informed on what's actually happening with it, I think it's critical for us to find a path forward, a safe path forward for the utilization of this technology, which, and I don't think we should hide from this. It also poses great benefits to humanity as well. Now, it's possible that we could use the technology to catch cancer sooner. That's a pretty obvious application of it that could save hundreds of thousands, millions of lives.
Yeah, we were just unpacking the good and the bad. I do wonder about, is there the sense of urgency the same way people would be acting if there was like an asteroid shuttling towards Earth? I also wonder about how effectively we can regulate AI, because I look at how kind of unregulated big tech is globally, and of course some jurisdictions are better at it than others. This is despite some decent, though very patchwork efforts. It's going to require, I think, a much more coordinated approach for AI. The difficulty is getting, friendly nations to act together, step one. Much more challenging after that is going to be getting any kind of actual buy-in from regimes like Russia and China and others. So bottom line, there is a lot of work, a ton of work to be done. It feels very urgent, and it seems like we have everything to lose if things don't start happening soon and quickly and meaningfully.
Yeah, look, I have no idea. I think this is what it comes down to, which is it's just a massive unknown. We have no idea how fast the technology will accelerate. We have no idea what stage it's at. Is the GPT-4, is that now the best we can do with the existing research that is available, and that there needs to be another technological breakthrough to then push past that? When will that technological breakthrough come? Will it happen in a research lab in a big tech corporation in the US? Will it happen in China? Will it happen in Russia? We really have no idea. And then when you talk about the existential threat of AI, that's probably true. That's likely true for many other things as well, whether it's global warming or nuclear weapons. And so I think we have to have, obviously, a discourse about all of that, ensure that it is top of mind for us, that we're doing everything we can to keep it safe. But when it comes down to something like, how do you regulate AI, a technology that is universally available, that some kid in China could get really good at and become the next Jeffrey Hinton and then develop the next super weapon? I don't even know. I can't even start to tell anybody how we would go about doing that. And so it's a big, big challenge. And it's frustrating to even think about, I think, for many people, because we all kind of feel so helpless about it. We could elect the best politicians in the world that are doing the best job at regulating it, but really it almost feels like it's just out of reach. I think the most important thing, and you mentioned this, was to talk about it, to have that discussion. But ultimately, it's one of those unknown unknowns that we have in the world. And I think we have to kind of settle with that and do whatever we can in the interim to try to make sure it's safe.
Thanks so much for your time and your insight. My feeling is it is a monumental task, and it's better to kind of try and get ahead of it versus trying to put that genie back in the bottle. It doesn't work. It doesn't work ever. And you can get all your daily business news with the Peak Daily podcast. It is available for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you find your favorite podcasts.